Well, it looks like we've still got some people trickling in here, but we do have some reminders before we get started. If all of our members would ensure that they're muted with their video turned off, it helps us conserve bandwidth. The meeting's being recorded, and a link is going to be forwarded to all of our Dallas County Master Gardeners. The chat feature is available to ask questions or make comments unless the presenter gives you other directions. And for best viewing, use the view speaker feature versus all participants or gallery options. And we're going to have Joellen monitoring the chat to answer questions or comments. And with that, I think we'll call the meeting to order, and I will hand it over to Abby.
Thank you, Jessica. Welcome to this September monthly meeting of the Dallas County Master Gardener Association. Hope you all are enjoying this very nice cooler weather in the morning. I know it felt great to get out there for a walk this morning. Today, we're going to have Tony Moorhead will be telling us about tried and true plants that pass the test of Texas. We're going to have Judy Schmidt from the city of Dallas talk to us on stormwater. And the project spotlight today is going to be on Coppell ISD School Gardens. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Tony Moorhead. She is a Tarrant County Master Gardener, and she started in the program in 2005. She became a Texas Certified Landscape Professional in 2013. She is the owner, garden designer of Signature Gardens. She is a member of the Tarrant County Speakers Bureau, and she speaks on multiple topics. She has lived in Texas since 1986 and moved to Grapevine in 1988. Growing up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin, she likes to say she has been digging in the dirt for a long time. Tony loves helping people learn how to love gardening in Texas. She oversees the landscape maintenance at Courtside Bible Church in Southlake. Tony's home garden has been featured in the Colleyville Promenade Garden Tour, the South Lake Spin into Spring Garden Tour, the Grapevine Garden Tour, and of course the Tarrant County Master Gardener Garden Tour. Tony has written several articles for the Grapevine Garden Club and newsletter, and wrote a column called Tony's Tips for the Tarrant County Master Gardener newsletter. Please welcome Tony Moorhead. Tony, want to go ahead and take over?
Okay, well, thank you. Let me try sharing my screen here. All right. There we go. Can everyone see that? Okay, if somebody can let me know when we're getting close to the end so that I can scoot along if I need to. There is a,
Tony, we're not seeing the full screen. We're seeing half. Unless that's me. Now I think I see your face full screen, but I don't see your PowerPoint.
So let's try again. How's that? Does that work?
Oh, that's better.
Well, for some reason, it's not forwarding, though. The slides are not progressing. Well, what's going on with that?
Dorothy, you got any ideas?
I would
Here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Now we're working. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for having me. It's good to be back, although I didn't have to drive as far this time. So today, yes, we're going to talk about tried and true plants that are reliable in our Texas extreme climate. And well, now I'm not forwarding again. It just stopped.
Tony, look at the bottom of your screen and see, sometimes there's arrows at the bottom that you can go forward with. Like actually on the slide, no? Do you have a mouse that you can hover over it, over your slide and?
Yeah. Wow. Huh. I've never had this happen before. It's always just shared. All right, so Texas is the land of extremes. And now I'm not sharing again. Wow, what is happening here?
No, I can see the slide.
But it won't progress for me for some reason.
I think the PowerPoint hasn't loaded on your computer or something entirely.
It should be completely on there. Try one more time here. Oh, y'all, I'm so sorry. Wow, I don't know why this is not progressing. Is someone else still sharing? Maybe?
Tony, you're the only one sharing right now.
Okay.
I would close it on, and then reopen the file and see if that triggers something.
Okay, let me try that. Okay, let's keep trying it. All right, yay, land of extremes. So extreme cold, which we all saw in February. And if you'll notice on the chart to the left, we tied for number 2 in the coldest in history in Texas. So, and then, we all lived through those, 12 days below freezing with the -2 on February 16th. And, everybody used to laugh at us. Yes?
Tony, it's Joelle, and I hate to interrupt, but I'm seeing your face.
Well,
And not.
Is my screen not sharing?
It
Try.
It didn't look like, I'm not getting the share button on my screen that would show that you're sharing.
This is so bizarre. Now do you see it?
Not yet. Oh, here we go. Let's see what happens now. Okay.
Do you see this?
I see, yes, we see that.
Okay, and is it forwarding?
It's scrolling down. I would just,
do you see it says extreme cold?
no, we don't see that.
You know what? I saw something pop up that Fran Powell is sharing her screen.
Okay, let me look. I don't see that, Joellen.
It was just something that popped up, and I'm seeing the Zoom screens.
Yeah, I think that was Fran's screen.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm going to try one more time here.
Okay, we see it. We see it now. Why don't you just try?
Do you
scrolling?
see it now? Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Texas is the land of extremes. You see that?
Yes.
Now you see the extreme cold?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. You're looking at my screen, not me, right?
Right.
Okay, let's try again. All right, so February of this year, it hit the number 2 slot for the coldest in history. And then, of course, we had those 2 weeks that were below 32 with February 16th as the coldest. So everybody used to laugh at us when we would get too cold in our 20s and 30s, but I think we were justified in February, don't you, for wanting to put on our furs. So we also are the land of extreme heat. Oh my goodness, look at those temperatures. And 1980, I didn't move here until 86, but 1980 takes up about half of those record temps there. So I'm kind of glad I missed 1980, but I was here for 2011, which hit the #1 spot for the greatest number of days over 100 degrees, and 40 of those were consecutive. Wow, I don't know how we lived through that. We also are the land of extreme rainfall at times. Our average rainfall is 34 inches, but look at 2015. We didn't quite double that, but we were pushing it. And with all that rain, we had extreme flooding. This is Lake Grapevine and the spillway, water going over the spillway, flooding in Flower Mound, roads underwater. And when we're not flooding, we're in a drought. Here's 2011. The state of Texas, the whole state was in a state of drought. And if you see in the Dallas-Fort Worth area there, we were in a severe drought. And if you look at the driest years on that chart, I'm surprised that 1980 and 2011 didn't make that chart, but they were close. They were close. And we also have, record snowfall here sometimes. I wasn't here in the 70s, but I was certainly here for 2010 when I think 12 of those 17 inches fell in one day. This is my backyard, and you can see my crepe myrtles there were just lying on the ground. They were so heavy with snow. I know we had a lot of tree damage that year as well. We also are the land of extreme wind. North Texas is right there in Tornado Alley. And then, of course, everything is bigger in Texas. Look at that hail. This picture was from Wiley. So if our extreme weather is not challenging enough, we have challenging soils. We predominantly have alkaline soil that is heavy clay. There are some areas that have that lovely sandy soil, but most of us have to work with that alkaline clay. But don't guess, you can send a soil sample into soiltesting.tamu.edu and get all the information about that. And if our weather and our soils are not challenging enough, we have challenging pests. We have webworms and bagworms and armyworms and crepe myrtle bark scale and grasshoppers chewing everything to smithereens and armadillos digging up everything and rose rosette. I mean, how can we grow anything but rocks, right? But we can do better. And I think I may have shown you this slide when I spoke to you the last time, but I did a program for my garden club about having color in your garden all year long. So each one of these rectangles represents a month in your garden and the beautiful things that we can grow. So we can grow some things here, but how do we do that? First of all, we have to start with the soil. We have to improve that clay soil with compost because, it improves your soil texture and adds nutrients. The saying is plant a 50-cent plant in a $5 hole. And I don't till much anymore. I just top dress. And then as I'm planting, that compost gets mixed into the planting hole. And that seems to be enough. And if you have that heavy clay soil, we recommend adding expanded shale. It's shale rock that's superheated and it's broken up into this gravel, and you can mix it into your planting areas to break up that clay soil, and it stays there. So it's not, doesn't continue to decompose. So you want to mix that down in deeply though. It's not just a top dressing. And then after we've, prepped our soil and done all the planting, which we will get to the plants in just a minute, we need to mulch because mulching conserves moisture on those drought years. We need all the help we can get. One thing that is tried and true is that weeds are going to grow. So, mulching will help suppress those weeds. And moderating soil temperatures. When we get those freezes, it's good to have your soil mulched. It'll protect your plants a little bit more. And when we get those extreme hot years, it can moderate that soil temperature as well. And then mulch just looks good too. So the next step in this process of trying to grow something is choosing native and adapted plants. I've said it before, but I'm not a native purist. I prefer to use plants that work in our area, and sometimes those are not native. But the general definition of native, plants that were growing here naturally when the European settlers came, they're hardy in our harsh and unpredictable climate, as we just went through how harsh and unpredictable it can be. And those plants are usually more resistant to pests and diseases, which I just showed you a few of those. And then adapted plants, obviously not native to Texas, but they originate in areas with similar crummy soil types, similar unpredictable climates, and similar hardiness zone. So if you are interested in more natives, you can go to the Native Plant Society of Texas website right there. And why do we use native and adapted? Because they tend to be more drought tolerant. They tend to be more heat tolerant. They are easier on water and usually need less fertilizer and pesticide requirements. And I use them because they pass the extreme test that Texas dishes out. So once, we've prepped our soil, we've chosen the right plants, now we need to put them in the right place. So you need to consider those cultural requirements of sun and shade and water. We have those wet years like 2015 and everybody gets all excited about hydrangeas, and then we get a 2011 year that they all go crispy on us. And on the flip side of that, we get those drought years like 2011 and everybody goes all yucca and cacti, and then we get a 2015 and they all rot. So we need to find a happy medium there on our plant choices based on wise water use. And then of course that soil pH, that can be adjusted some by adding certain amendments like compost, but you can't really change it drastically because we're continuing to water with alkaline water, usually city water. So work within the pH that you have. And then of course the hardiness zone, I always recommend choosing plants that are in that zone 6 to 9. So you get some cushion on the cold tolerance and you get some extra, heat tolerance on the zone 9, because we're zone 8 here. So know your plant characteristics. You're all master gardeners, so you know how to do your research, Google it, check Texas A&M sites, know those mature sizes so you can put them in the right place. And always, when I'm designing, I'm always considering pruning from the get-go. I choose plants that fit a spot with a once a year, maybe twice a year prune. And if it won't fit in that requirement, then I choose a different plant. And then I always like to remind people, consider your windows because a lot of our windows are just 1.5 feet off the ground. So we don't want to be putting large plants right in front of them that are going to grow and cover our windows. So, okay, we're not going to try this in Texas. I took this picture in Boston, and a Japanese maple in full blasting sun surrounded by hot reflective concrete would last a nanosecond in Texas. We can grow them, but they need that protection. So, all right, and then back to that hardiness thing. We are in zone 8 here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And again, I recommend choosing plants that can, that fit in that 6 to 9, just for that safety, that you're not going to be worried about these extreme freeze events like that, because they'll be able to handle it. Now, we did hit some zone 6 temperatures this time. So I don't know that any other state in the nation can claim 5 hardiness zones in one state. Pretty amazing. Okay, so look at your plant tags. You see here how it's showing zones 10 and 11. You know that plant's going to freeze because it's not hardy in our area. And here's Kaleidoscope Abilia. It is hardy to zone 6. I did see some damage on it, but it was very surprising because it is hardy to 10 below. So, but just do your research on that. Here's something that's trying and true. And I don't like to drag hoses for the reason that they're always tangled and you never see the kink until you're 50 feet away. Anyway, I prefer to use this kind of a hose because it just goes neatly in this little hose pot. It's those coiled hoses like that. Anyway, all right, so first of all, I want to go through some tried and troubled plants that we saw those issues with this February. So Indian hawthorn, Entomosporium fungal leaf spot has been a problem with those for a long time. And if there's any leaves left over that didn't succumb to that, then the bagworms come in and chew them to smithereens. And then in February, they were wiped out. So this is what I like to call the trifecta of done. I am done with this plant. Personal opinion, I'm just, it's got 3 strikes against it, so I just will never use Indian hawthorn again. To each his own. A Podocarpus, now this is at my neighbor's house, and this was taken this year. Her Podocarpus was absolutely unfazed, but everybody else's that I saw looked like that. Severe freeze damage. Now some of them, you know, if you prune them very carefully, you could work them out of it, but some of them continue to even decline over the summer. So, and these plants need perfect drainage, so it's not something that I use on a general rule because they are problematic with freezes and even less severe events than we had this February. Pittosporum. Doesn't matter if it's the large variegated or the dwarf, Wheeler's dwarf. They just look like that, and I have seen them freeze in less of it, you know, cold weather that we had this year. But I'm just not willing to use structural evergreen plants that are so iffy on cold hardiness. You know, granted, we're probably not going to get such a severe freeze again for many, many, many years, but I just, my opinion, I want plants that can handle those extremes. Waxleaf Ligustrum, you know, lots of people used to plant these as hedging plants. They grow very, very large. You know, a lot of people do them as topiaries by their front door, but this is what they look like this year. They're just toast. They're brown everywhere. I will never use these plants. Loropetalum. I see a lot of stem canker on them. It's bacterial gall. There's no cure for it. They suffer from iron deficiency in our high alkaline soils, and then the freeze took them out this year. Now, again, this is another one that fits on that trifecta of done for me. I just won't use them anymore. You know, you can see in the frozen picture there that it's starting to come back from the ground, and that's, you know, that's fine if you want to cut them back and wait for them to come back. If you don't have any stem canker issues and you don't have any iron deficiency issues, and you don't mind waiting, because they do grow very quickly, but it's just too many problems for me. So another one on my do not use list. Soft caress Mahonia. Oh, I had such high hopes for Mahonia soft caress because I love the texture of it, but it's completely dead in my, you know, it got wiped out this year. And I have grown it before where it's frozen to the ground, but where I want a 3 to 4 foot evergreen shrub, I don't want to start from the ground every year. So this one's off my list. You know, unless you put it in a very protected spot or you're willing to protect it, I'm not willing to protect. I, on purpose this year, did not protect anything in my yard because I wanted to see what could handle the extreme, because, you know, it was predicted that it would be a record breaker and I wanted to know what would work. So soft caress is not one of those things. Cherry laurel. Now here's a native cherry laurel. I have them all over along kind of this creek that runs behind my property. They're 20 feet tall. Boy, they took a hit. All of the side branches died. All of the leaves turned brown and crispy like that. But about a month later, I saw all these sprouts coming out of the trunk. So it told me that it was still alive. But I can't climb 20 feet up and prune off all those side branches. So what I did is I cut it to the ground, and now I have a nice shrub coming back again. So there is that. Agave. you know, these plants certainly love our 2011 years where we have minimal water and extreme heat, but they don't like 2021 temps, that's for sure. So if you choose agave, just choose varieties that are hardy here. I don't have a list of those. I don't tend to use agave because I like to touch plants and they're prickly. So anyway, but just do your research, make sure that they're hardy for our area. Cast iron, I love cast iron. But this is what it looked like when it was covered with snow. And again, I didn't protect anything. Of course, it started to decline when the snow melted. Then this is from a client of mine showing me hers. They all look like that. I cut mine completely to the ground. I knew that they would come back. It took a while, but you know, they started sending up all that new growth. And now that's what it looks like today. Here's a close-up. So they did recover. It took a while. So, you know, this is something I say might protect if we have another severe winter this year, which is, it's not likely, but I just don't want it to have such shock 2 years in a row. But anyway, it did recover from that. So I will definitely continue using this plant. Distillium. I'm curious if any of you have experience with Distillium. There's several varieties of it. This happens to be Cinnamon Girl. Maybe put it in the chat because I would love to know your experience. I can't keep this plant alive. It dies for clients. It's died for me. It died in the freeze. It just dies. So anyway, Confederate Jasmine. Madison is the most cold hardy of the Confederate Jasmines. This is a picture in my garden when it was beautiful several years ago. And of course, in February, it did that. And it's done this on other years in my garden too. So I just cut it to the ground and waited, as we did with a lot of our plants, right? And sure enough, it started growing back. And here's how it looks today. So if we have another cold year this year, hopefully it will come back again, but if we have a mild year, it will stay evergreen and be fine. And the bloom fragrance, oh my goodness, it's so worth growing this plant. But this is on the south side of my house, on my chimney brick, so it is a very, very protected spot, and it's still froze, so not a vine I would put on the north side of my house. Fatsia. About every few years when we get a hard freeze, I lose probably a third of my Fatsia. This year, I probably lost 3/4 of it. So I have this tiny little plant that came back. I do like this plant for the shade, but if you're going to use it, be sure that it is in a protected spot. And I don't use a lot of it because I know that it can be severely damaged in the freeze. Oleander freezes a lot, and sometimes you just have to cut off a few dead stems, and sometimes you have to cut it to the ground. So just know that going in, that it has some cold hardiness issues. Certainly loves our heat. Palms, boy, they took a hit this year. The picture on the left is how it looked right after the freeze. The picture on the right, you can see right there when the top collapses, they're done. And those plants are done. But I have a client who has a Texas Sable palm, which is one of our most cold hardy. So the fronds turned brown, but you can see that as they're coming out of where they're attached to the trunk there, they're still green. So we had hope. And sure enough, early summer, it started sending out some new fronds, and then it really started growing. And that's how it looks today. So it did come back, but you know, do your research on palms too. There are very few that are really, really cold hardy here. Texas Sable, Sable texana is one. Windmill palms are hardy. And then there's a dwarf Sable minor. I took this picture at my dentist's office just the other day. So it obviously survived, but it stays smaller. So just do your research on palms if you're going to go that route. Trees, oh boy, they really took a hit this year. A lot of our oak trees Some of them, as you can see in the picture on the left, they're trying to leaf back out again very low. Some of them, that's a live oak, I believe, on the left there. And on the right, this is a chinkapin oak. My neighbor's has severe damage on that. And this is at my church garden. We lost a live oak there that had severe bark damage. It's pulling, just breaking away from, and it has severe vascular and damage to the system of the tree. So this one's going to have to be removed. There's no recovering that. Once you destroy that vascular system, it just can't come back from that. So I just read Neil Sperry's article, and Steve Hauser contributed to that. Then his general guideline is if your tree has over 50% with normal foliage, that it's probably worth saving. This is another one of my neighbor's trees, and it's a red oak, and you can just see the tip damage there, but it's more than 50%, with normal foliage. So I think they're going to try to, keep trying to save that tree. So, all right, if you have crepe myrtles, sorry, that had severe freeze damage, they're genetically shrubs, so they're very easy to recover from that. You just cut them to the ground, and then, they're going to send up a bunch of new stems, and you choose maybe half of those that are the strongest stems and cut the rest of them away. And then within a year or two, you're going to have a nice new tree again. You just have to train it back into being a tree. Okay, so now let's get to the stuff that worked. All right, holly. And, I've heard Neil Sperry talk about hollies for 40 years. And, you're like, oh, holly, is there anything else? But I'm telling you what, they work. They just work. Any kind of holly. I have several listed there. This is Carissa holly in the picture. I mean, nothing seems to faze them. Nellie R. Stevens, Oakland holly. It's so beautiful in the snow. They say if you want a pyramidal type holly that you rarely have to prune, Oakland is the one. Burford holly, now here it's just in a hedge, but I prefer if you're going to grow a hedge that has a more natural shape instead of taking a hedge trimmer to it and, buzzing it in a flat-topped square. So these are pruned by hand so that they can retain that natural form. And I also like Burford holly when they're just a standalone specimen that you can allow to grow larger. Burford hollies are very easy to keep at 3 feet, but if you allow them to grow 4 or 5 and just have a natural shape to them, I just think they're awesome. Of course, dwarf Yaupon holly, that's what I use instead of boxwood. They're native. They can take severe pruning. They're just very, very tough. I did have a little damage on some of mine, so I cut them back severely, and they're pulling out of it. So I will continue to use dwarf Yaupon holly. There's the tree form of Yaupon holly. I prefer to let it grow out into that natural form. Please don't do the mushroom of your Yaupon hollies. We want low maintenance. Then there's possum holly, which is deciduous, but still a great holly for our area. And then Nandinas, and I can hear the gasping in the audience. Now these are the non-spreading, non-berrying varieties of Nandina. So they're not invasive in the least. But they're just, to me, indispensable in a garden. They took the freeze like a champ. They have such beautiful color. These are Gulf Streams. I like to use Obsession. They have more of that burgundy color to them. Then there's Lemon Lime, that obviously is a lighter lemony color. They work in the shade. They work in the sun. Here is the Nana variety. This is at the Fort Worth Botanic Garden where they used it to edge a bed there, and then they have the pink phlox beyond it. I mean, they're so easy, so easy. There's Firepower and Blush, and another variety. Then, these are the Firepowers that they've used, I thought, very wisely at the entry to a development where they don't have to prune them because they stay so small. So that keeps that HOA maintenance a little lower, maybe. Here, this was taken at the Dallas Arboretum. This is Flirt variety. I just thought this was very smart ground cover right there, where you use Flirt at the background, and then in the foreground is the variegated silvery sunproof Liriope. So that's a very, very low maintenance, good looking ground cover bed. Here I used a Harbor Dwarf at the edge of that bed. They're just so easy. These are Gulf Streams. I've had them for 23 years in my garden. Just remember, don't prune them by hedging them with a hedge trimmer. You take the tallest 1/3 of their canes per year, cut those to the ground with hand pruners, and that keeps them full and compact and healthy. Okay, next category, Abelias. So many varieties of Abelias. There are Abelias that grow 8 feet tall and Abelias that grow 3 feet tall, and varieties in between. They work in full sun, they work in part shade. They bloom all summer. They're so fragrant. They attract the pollinators. Canyon Creek is one of my favorite. Oh, so fragrant. It's just limey green color. And don't prune these, just let them grow into that natural weeping form like that. Kaleidoscope Abelias, I love their color. Now, some kaleidoscopes did take a hit this year, which surprised me, because as you saw that plant tag earlier, they are zone 6. They're hardy to 10 below. So I just gave them a hard prune and they're pulling out of it. One thing I want to point out here, I love using kaleidoscope with Purple Heart because I love that purple and lime combination. Here's Sherwood Abilia. I like to use Sherwood on retaining walls because they're so drapey and they're so fragrant. Here, these are my Rose Creeks, Abelias, right after the freeze. So they look kind of sad. They look kind of frozen. So what I did was I pruned them extremely hard, which they can take. And this is how they look today. They're just full of blooms, so fragrant, just didn't even skip a beat. Ligustrum. Now, I don't recommend the wax leaf Ligustrum anymore, and really never have, but I'm quite impressed with this Sunshine Ligustrum. It took the freeze, it did defoliate, but it leafed right back out again. They can take the heat. You just need to grow them in full sun to keep that really pretty bright color to them. If you grow them in any kind of shade, they just turn kind of a medium green, and then there's no interest to them. But anyway, I'm quite impressed with this. Let it just grow in its natural form. It's going to be about 4 or 5 feet tall and wide, and just has that really free form shape to it. I don't care for them hedged into little balls, but Siniso or Texas sage, Leucophyllum, extremely tough in our summers. You know that. Oh my goodness, can take just brutal heat conditions and drought. And they did defoliate this winter, but they came back fine. So can still recommend those. And of course, they get the beautiful purple blooms on them. We call this the barometer bush because usually it blooms in response to moisture. Vitex, you can grow this as a multi-trunk ornamental tree, or you can let it just be a large shrub about 15 feet. Extremely tough for our area. Spireas, I think my bridal wreath actually did better this year with the cold than it's ever, performed in my garden. So maybe some of our plants were actually spurred on by that cold. Of course, Anthony Water and Lime Mound. Anthony Water, my trick with that one is to prune it to the ground every February and let it come back fresh, and it seems to do better. Rose of Sharon or Althea, very tough for our area. Of course, they're deciduous, so, they were fine through the freeze, didn't have any damage. And I also like to grow them as just large shrubs. This is at my church garden. I have it planted in an area that it's right by Mexican feathergrass, that we even turned the sprinkler off there because they can succumb to some root rot. So make sure you have it in a great draining area. But hot and dry, they're happy. Gold Dust Sakuba for the shade. I love this plant. And when it froze, it looked pretty sad. It looked pretty sad, but as soon as it was above 32, it was like nothing happened. This plant does not like the sun, so make sure you put it in even deep shade it can handle. A little morning sun might be okay, but absolutely no afternoon sun. There's also a solid green variety I like to use, dwarf green Akuba, and it gets these red berries on it, and it looks so pretty when we get some snow on it because those red berries just pop. So very tough plant. This one's shorter, about 3 feet tall and wide. I've had both Akubas in my garden for well over 20 years and super, super low maintenance. I just do nothing to them. Mahonia, now, I don't recommend the soft caress Mahonia anymore, but leatherleaf Mahonia, it's a workhorse. It just handles everything. It gets these purple, bluish berries on it after the blooms. It is a little prickly. It's my only complaint about it. So, you're not going to be caressing this like you can the soft caress, but put it, toward the backdrop where you're not going to be brushing up against it, and just let it do its thing in the shade. It can handle deep shade. Prostrata yew or plum yew, I planted this in my garden in that 2011 year when it was so hot and dry. It did fine. It's done fine every year since. My only complaint about it is it's extremely slow growing, but I love the evergreen ferny texture of it. This is Utopia yew that grows a little bit taller, but again, has handled everything. It obviously needs shade, full shade, but I love its soft texture. It looks, pine needly, but it's very soft texture. American Beautyberry, we're all familiar with that one. It just sailed right through everything. It's a shade, obviously shade plant, gets the purple berries on it right now that the birds love, and there's also the white berry variety. You can let this just grow as big as 8 feet tall if you want, or I like to keep mine size control, so I cut it down to about 18 inches every February time frame, not when it's covered with snow, but cut it down, and then it'll grow up to about 4 feet during the growing season, so I keep mine about that size. Oak leaf hydrangea, this is about the only hydrangea that I use other varieties, but this is the one that I can tell you can handle whatever for Texas. It gets just gorgeous white blooms on it in the May-June time frame, and then it's followed up with that beautiful fall color. I do supplement with water in my garden, but I follow the Tarrant County restrictions. And I don't baby this plant at all. Like I have some mop heads that I'm going to have to take a water can to in the middle of the week sometimes to give it a little extra drink, but I don't ever have to do anything special for oak leaf. And I have to talk about Japanese maples. I understand they're not native, but I'm kind of a collector of them. I have 29 varieties in my garden, and they can burn a little bit in the heat of the summer, but their spring color and their fall color, it's just so worth it to me to grow these. And again, I don't give them any extra babying in my garden. They live or they don't, so I do supplement with water according to restrictions, but I don't drag hoses to them and give them anything extra. They just need shade. We can't grow them like they do in Boston out in full sun, or in Oregon in full sun. They need a protected shade spot, but we can grow them. Can't believe I'm putting Asian jasmine in a talk because I don't like it. But if you're going to, you can't kill the stuff. You can't kill the stuff. I thought 2011 would take it out with the drought. I thought this year might take it out with the freeze, but nope, it's back. But the only place I would tolerate using it is in an application like this, where it's in a ground cover, as a ground cover by itself, or with a large tree. I do not like using it when there are shrubs planted in the bed, because it grows up into the shrubs and it's just a mess to maintain. So, but it does survive, so it has to make it's tried and true. It has to make the list. Incidentally, the ground cover, that's the taller one in the background there, is that plum yew, that prostrata yew. So it'll grow about, a couple feet tall. So it does make a nice ground cover type there. Mondo grass for our shade, a tried and true ground cover. For the shade, I use the dwarf variety for ground cover around flagstone. So here you can see that again. Big blue liriope is kind of my ground cover of choice because it doesn't climb up the trees. You buzz it down in late winter, remove any winter burn or any summer damage on it, and then you get all new fresh growth for the rest of the season. So I tend to use that. Now there are some sedges, Texas sedge, and I just went blank on the other one. But I have not tried the sedges for a ground cover, but I heard Patrick Dickinson talk about that. That's his ground cover of choice. So you might check into the sedges. There's another kind of variety liriope that I use that's called Silver Dragon. This is a ground cover type, so it is the spreading type. But there's also the clumping type, the Silvery Sunproof. So you can kind of tell the difference between those because the Silvery Sunproof has more of that creamy white and green, where the Silver Dragon has a very stark white and almost has a grayish cast to it. And Neil Sperry always says, I don't know why they call it Silvery Sunproof, because it's not silver and it's not sunproof, because it really doesn't like full blasting all day sun. Put it in an area where at least it gets some afternoon protection. And then a couple native ground covers, horseherb and frog fruit. Horseherb is deciduous, but it comes back faithfully every year, gets the nice little yellow blooms on it. And then frog fruit, both very, frog fruit's very low growing, maybe just less than 6 inches, and gets little white blooms on it. And then horseherb grows about a foot tall. So both tough ground covers for our area if you're looking for native. Ornamental grasses, I did see a little bit of trouble with the pink muley coming back from the freeze, but I think ornamental grasses are worth replanting if you lost one, because you get usually on a general year, get so much bang for the buck. Pine muley, I've had no trouble with that. Lindheimer's muley, native, drought tolerant, took the freeze. Adagio is my favorite miscanthus grass. I love those. I leave them for the winter because I love the texture. Even, when we get some ice on them, I think that just adds something for the winter garden. You cut them back hard in February down to about 3 inches above the ground, and they just come back, and they're so easy, and they can handle whatever. Mexican feathergrass, a native, tough, little, extremely drought tolerant. Don't give this too much water, it will rot. We probably in those 2015 flooding years probably lost some of this to too much water. This particular bed is at my church garden, has no irrigation there, so it's pretty happy. So now I just want to move into quickly to some perennials for our area. Now the summer of 2011, I took this picture, and yeah, that we all know that year. I actually did a blog post, and I called it Survivor Texas Garden Edition. I never watched the series Survivor, but I took the terminology out of that program and wrote this article. So you might get a kick out of that, and you'll see all the plants that thrived in that summer. I'll give you my address at the end, but you might want to check that out. And then of course my perennials survived our record-breaking 2021. So salvias, I just can't do a sun-loving perennial bed without salvias, because they are the workhorses of our gardens. In the summer, they are just workhorses. Any kind of salvia. This is Salvia Gregoiii, probably my favorite perennial. This was taken at my church garden. If you look at the Indian hawthorns to the left of the picture, they're all gone, but the Salvia Gregoiii are doing awesome. This is Henry Dolberg right there. I use a lot of that. Russian sage, obviously can handle our summers and love our summers, needs extremely good drainage, but my sister grows this in Wisconsin where it's 30 below, so it can handle all the extremes as long as it gets good drainage and full blasting sun. Sexpania. I love Sexpania. What a tough plant. You can just see how bright it is in the perennial border here. And it's going to grow 1.5 feet tall, 4 feet wide, loves our summer. Of course, it goes dormant in a freeze, but comes back faithfully every year. Same with skull cap. Stays very low. It's evergreen. Now this year I did have to cut mine back hard because it did have some damage from the freeze, but then it just grew right back from the ground. Catmint, another one of those that has such a wide range of hardiness. You know, again, my sister grows this in Wisconsin where it's 30 below, but yet we can grow it here. It does great for us here. Bath's pink dianthus, you know, needs a well draining area. It doesn't like too much water, but I love their early spring blooms. I love the soft foliage of this plant when it's done blooming. Here you can see how I've used it in the bed with the catmint and Salvia Gregoiii and Salvia nemorosa. That's at my church garden. 4-nerve daisy. This plant is, on a mild winter, will bloom almost 12 months out of the year. Very tiny, extremely drought tolerant, so it loves those hot summers, but it did fine through the freeze. It came back and bloomed beautifully this year. Artemisia, Palace Castle, this is another one that truly loves the summer with pretty much no water. It'll grow about 2 feet tall and 4 to 5 feet wide. And if you will cut it back every February to about 6 inches, you'll keep it from getting woody and rangy. So cut it back, you know, in that late February time frame, right before spring growth comes. So if you have had any damage on it, all that gets cut off. But then it absolutely loves the hot summers. Here you can see I've used it in that garden bed with the ornamental grasses and the salvias and purple heart. Of course, daylilies, they go, well, we do have some evergreen types, but mostly, dormant. So they were fine through the freeze and came back just fine. Irises, talk about tried and true. Irises have been around forever. So yeah, they can handle pretty much anything. I don't know if you've ever tried roof iris, but they can handle a little bit more shady conditions. So they do better with a little bit of shade. I wouldn't put them in dense shade, but as long as they get some afternoon protection, they tend to do a little bit better. Cannas, they're not going to be happy in a container through a hard freeze like that. I lost any of them that I had in a container, but in the ground, they are just fine. And of course, they love our summers. I heard, I think it was Steve Bender with Southern Living one time say, if you live in the South and you don't like cannas, you better learn to like them because they just do so well here. And I just think they add such bold texture to our perennial gardens. So these are my top 2 favorite varieties because of the foliage. I don't care if they ever bloom. I just like the foliage. Hardy hibiscus, very hardy down to like zone 4, which is I think 30 below, but yet they thrive in our heat. They do like a tiny bit more moisture, so maybe put those in a spot that is maybe not as well draining in your yard because they love that moisture. But Texas Star will grow all of 6 feet tall, and there's a white variety of that as well. And then, of course, lots of varieties of the other kind. That's Flare in the picture there, but lots of, in Texas, there's some even on the Texas Superstar category. Katie's Ruela, I just find this plant indispensable as well. It goes dormant, so it took our freeze fine, it takes the summer fine, it handles wet, it handles dry, it blooms in the hottest time of the year. Yes, it does pop seeds, but to me, it's very easy to dig those up and, remove them where you don't want them. I don't recommend the tall variety because I think it's extremely invasive, but I do still use the dwarf variety. Red yucca, this is a plant that I say is the closest thing to furniture in your garden because you pretty much have to do nothing to it. If you want to deadhead and get rid of the spent blooms, but it's evergreen, it can exist on rainfall alone. It'll grow at least 3 feet tall and 4 feet wide. You can just leave it alone. I keep saying at my church garden, if anything dies, we're replacing it with a red yucca because I need the lowest maintenance possible up there. So throw in a red yucca. You can't lose. They take the cold, they take the heat, absolutely take the heat, and just make sure they have good drainage. Flamacanthus, hummingbird attractor, tough perennial, grows quite large, all 3-4 feet tall and wide, loves the summer, did fine through the cold. Purple heart, you can see I have it growing there with Turks Cap. I keep telling people my whole garden is going to be purple heart and Turks Cap someday because you can't kill either of them and they can handle anything. And you can see I've got it growing with the blue salvia there and the Sexpania in the distance. This is your regular old-timey purple heart that grows very large. Then there's a dwarf variety called Pale Puma that I like to use. And it stays more compact. I grow it in the sun, I grow it in the shade. Here you can see I've used it in this bed with the Sexpania and the ornamental grasses and the salvias and some sedums and skullcap. Here again with salvias and Sexpania. Purple coneflower, we're all familiar with that. Again, this grows in such a wide range, all the way up to zone 3 and 4, you know, in our area. Does fine through the heat, does fine through the cold. Phlox, same thing, very, very wide range of hardiness on this. Several varieties of that. John Fanick, I have had some powdery mildew problems with the John Fanick variety, but Victoria is great. Texas Pink is a good variety. So, and Rudbeckia, again, a very wide range of hardiness on that. Handles whatever Texas dishes out. Fall Aster, we're fixing to see this explode with color in another month or so. So that's always fun. I wish it bloomed longer, I will say that, but handles the summer, handles the cold. Different kinds of lilies, rain lilies, are, you know, they're tough. They come back. If you've never tried candy lily or blackberry lily, I recommend those. They have this iris-like foliage, and then they get these really dainty, cool orange blooms that pop up. And then the seed pods look like little blackberries, and that's why they call it blackberry lily. So that's a fun one to try if you haven't. And here's our beloved Turks Cap. Native. This was taken at Myers Park and Event Center up in McKinney, which is a Collin County Master Gardener research garden, and they only supplement with water once a year up there. So that Turks Cap is tough. My little trick with Turks Cap to keep it from spreading invasively is after it freezes and, you know, one of those long stems may have come down, laid on the ground and rooted in, I rip those up and pull it back to the main plant and then cut it off. So I keep it just to the main plant and I don't let it keep rooting out. It can reseed as well, but they're easy to get out. But that's how I keep it kind of maintained into one large plant. Tropical giant spider lily is tropical in look, name only. It's very hardy. Now when it freezes, it's going to look like that. You just cut it to the ground and it will come right back the following spring. I prefer Hymenicalis over crinum lilies because of the foliage. If this plant never bloomed, I wouldn't care because to me the foliage is so dramatic. Where crinum lilies tend to have their foliage comes out and then it kind of breaks about halfway and then it just flops on the ground. So to me, it's kind of a messy look, but crinums are tried and true. That's for sure. They've been around for eons and you can't kill them, but I prefer Hymenicalis over them. Lenten rose or hellebore certainly love the cold. Mine bloomed right through the freeze, and they struggle a little bit in the summertime because their main time to shine is the winter. But if you just put them in a shady spot, In the wintertime, you'll be rewarded. Any of them in the frost kiss line are my favorite because they have the variegated foliage as well. So you get a little interest from the foliage too. What I like to do in the wintertime is to cut their blooms off and float them in a bowl of water so I can enjoy them in the house, because a lot of them, they only grow about a foot tall, and a lot of the styles, the blooms hang downward. So you almost have to be lying on the ground to appreciate their blooms. So this way I can bring them in the house and enjoy their blooms, because I don't really like being outside when it's 30 degrees and they're blooming. So I can enjoy them inside. Leopard plant, this is what I grow instead of Hosta. I grow Hostas in pots only because the slugs and the snails chew them to smithereens. They hate the heat, but Ligularia or Farfugium leopard plant, they just do amazing for me. There's a variegated variety. They bloom in November when nothing else is blooming. When it freezes, they're going to go flat as a pancake. Don't worry, cut them down. They'll be right back in the springtime and do great for you. And after they're done blooming, let those blooms completely dry and go to seed. They kind of look like a dandelion or a thistle. And if you scatter those dried blooms around, you might get some baby plants in your garden. I get baby leopard plants every single year because I scatter the seeds in. So African Hosta, Dromiopsis maculata, I use that. It does amazingly well. It's actually a bulb, so it goes dormant in the wintertime, but it came back with gangbusters this year. It's also called Little White Soldier because of that bloom right there. It has the spots on the foliage, kind of looks like a leopard frog to me. But anyway, tough little perennial. Needs good drainage though, so don't get that too much. Don't put that in a heavy clay, soggy area or the bulbs will rot. Holly fern, we did see some damage with those this year, but cut them to the ground and most of mine came back. I did have to replace a few, but on in a normal winter, they are evergreen and fine. Some years you have 2 brown fronds that you have to cut off. Sometimes you just cut them to the ground, but they are very reliably hardy. And you all know this, but I always tell people, don't freak out when you see the little spots on the backs of the leaves. It's not a disease. It's just baby fern spores. Wood fern, of course, they're deciduous and they go brown when it freezes. Cut them down. They come back faithfully every year. Mine tend to even like a little bit of brighter shade, so I have them at the edge of my shady areas because they tend to like that morning sun and do better than in deep shade. Oxalis, all kinds of oxalis. Again, you can't kill them. They go dormant in the winter, so that's not a problem, but come back faithfully every year. They need shade though, so they're not a full sun plant. Aqualegia or columbine, this is the native yellow, there's a native red. They can look a little crummy in the summertime. Their main time to shine is March and April when they're blooming. And then when they're done blooming, I just cut the whole plant to the ground because it kind of goes semi-dormant in the summertime anyway. And then when it starts to cool down, like, yay, it's cooling down now, then they start putting out new growth. And then they're evergreen for the winter and then bloom the following spring. This is just showing how I've used it in my garden next to some ferns and some oxalis, and this is on the north side of my house. Chocolate plant, if you've not tried this plant, it's awesome. It's for the shade. It gets these violet blooms on it that stand up about a foot above the plant. The whole plant is only about a foot tall and a little bit wider than that. It has really cool gray silvery variegation down the middle of that chocolate brown leaf. So that's a fun one to try. Hard to find, but if you find it, get it because it's been very reliable in my garden. Here's one that I rarely see, but it's tough. It took I have pictures of it in the snow and it's just doing fine. And it's great for an evergreen, just a little texture for the winter. So it's not going to knock your socks off with a bloom because this is the bloom. It's just this little tiny thing that grows up at ground level that you'll probably never even notice. But it's just an unusual evergreen to add texture in your shade garden. couple vines that I have found just work here are crossvine and Carolina jessamine, as opposed to Confederate jasmine that I showed you the trouble that it had, but both of these can handle our conditions, extreme conditions, and they both bloom. Well, Carolina jessamine is going to bloom in that March-April timeframe, and crossvine is going to bloom in that May-June timeframe. So they kind of have one main bloom season, but then they're evergreen. So that's what I like about them. Certainly bulbs work in our area. These are Spanish bluebells. They actually are fine in shadier conditions. So I like to plant these in with the columbine, because then you get the yellow and the blue blooming at the same time. So they're fun. And of course, bulbs can handle the freeze because our soils don't freeze. I think I've heard it said it in the history of Texas, our soil has only frozen down about an inch. So, you know, these bulbs are planted down into the 6-inch range. So they're just not bothered by freezes. You know, they're dormant when it's freezing, and then they come up in the spring. Of course, any of the daffodils. I don't recommend tulips because they don't, other than species tulips, but tulips do need that pre-chill time. They need 14 weeks of chilling, and on a normal winter, they just don't get that here. Of course, last year, I'm sure they did, but on a normal year, I don't recommend them. But daffodils do awesome. Byzantine glad, again, another bulb that blooms a little bit later than daffodils, so in that April time frame, but they came back just great this year and bloom fine, just that early spring bloomer. And then the foliage is going to go dormant. So you need, on daffodils and gladiolus, you need to let that foliage completely go dormant to store energy for the following year's bloom. Some fall blooming bulbs, oxblood lily and the red spider lily. Of course, they're just starting to pop up right now, so that's kind of fun to see. I always know I've survived another Texas summer when oxbloods start popping up. Autumn crocus, I haven't seen mine up yet, but I expect to start seeing that very shortly here, just a little yellow bloomer for the fall. That's pretty much it. These are some of my favorite gardening resources: Neil Sperry's book, Native Plants, Steve Huddleston, who was the Fort Worth Botanic Garden horticulturist, so I love his book, one of my favorite books actually. And then Greg Grant, his home landscaping book, one of my favorites as well. So also, when I talked at the beginning about all the records and everything of our climate, Ted Ryan with the National Weather Service just gave a talk to the Tarrant County Master Gardeners. And if you get a chance, you can just search, this is on YouTube, the video's on YouTube, just search this North Texas climate and Ted Ryan and it should pop up. It was just a lot of fascinating information about our records and our climate and the weather extremes that we've had. He does touch on climate change a little bit at the end, but it was just a very, very informative talk. So highly recommend going through and listening to that. And then, of course, some great websites. I always recommend anything that you want to research. If you will just put, as you know, as Master Gardeners, put tamu.edu either before or after whatever subject matter, you're going to get Texas A&M researched information. Of course, Texas Smartscape, Superstar, then Native Plant Society, and there's my Tarrant County site, but I'm sure y'all have your site as well, and then SaveTarrantWater.com. I have some other videos that I have done that for Save Tarrant Water that are on their YouTube page as well. So if you want to go listen to me talk about more plants, they're on there. These are my websites and Instagram and Facebook. And so if you want to go back and look at that article that I wrote about the 2011 plants that did well through that drought and record-breaking drought year, you can go back and check that out. If you just go to my blog and search Survivor, it'll pop up for there. So yeah, if you still feel challenged by the extremes that we have in Texas, there's still hope. You know, just throw some metal and some do a bottle tree. You don't have to water them. You don't have to worry about them freezing. Yeah, and the grasshoppers can't even decimate them. So there you go. And then, you know, nature is just going to grow wherever. We don't even have to help it out. This is just at my church parking lot. We're a little poppy group. So yeah. All right. So that's all I have for you this morning. Thank you for listening. If there's any questions, I will do my best. Sorry for the little technical difficulty at the beginning there, but glad we got that worked out.
Joellen, do you see anything in the chat?
Let me check. I see one more chat came in here. Oh, wonderfully helpful. Thanks so much. Thank you. A great presentation. I thought it was a great presentation too, Tony. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. We enjoyed it.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Tony. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks.
Abby, I think if you just want to share your video, you can talk and Jessica will put up the garden tour slide when you do. Or maybe just put it up, Jessica, whatever. Or whenever Abby tells you to, put up the garden tour slide.
Here we are. Super. Thank you, Jessica. This is the logo for the 2022 Spring Garden Tour. And those are the dates it's going to be. The garden tour team has been putting in lots of hours, and it's really going to be an amazing event with raffle and silent auction items and a speaker at each garden, and each garden is going to be plant tagged. So we will have that information also. So it'll be really great. Second announcement, today, lucky today, is the North Texas Giving Day. So if you haven't gone online and logged into their website and made a donation, you still have plenty of time to do that. It goes until I think 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. We have hoped to conduct our October meeting in person at Raincatcher's Garden, but COVID has prevented that. All meetings for the rest of the year, 2021, will be conducted via live Zoom. We're hopeful that that can change in next year, in 2022. Traditionally, we've always had our meetings, our monthly meetings, on the 4th Thursday of the month, except November, which is on the 2nd Thursday, and then no meeting in December. That changed in January of this year due to Texas A&M AgriLife conducting the Master Gardener School on Thursdays through April. But Jeff Raska has assured us that there will be no conflict for next year, and our meetings will consistently be conducted on the 4th Thursday of the month, starting at 11:30. We will continue posting Zoom recordings of meetings on our YouTube channel for members who cannot attend those meetings. And Joellen Noby is working on the 2022 schedule of speakers. And here are some of the topics she has lined up so far. Trees, choosing, pruning, and caring. Uncommon wildflowers of the LBJ grasslands. News from the front, what's new in the world of monarch butterfly science, topic on dragonflies, and a topic on ferns of Texas. These meetings will be posted on the DCMGA website calendar, and I will send out a notice the week of the meeting and a reminder the day before. So that brings us to shout outs. And I would like to do a shout out to Jada Oliver and the RNB1 team on their ribbons that they won at the State Fair of Texas. 4 of their jelly and jam creations won ribbons this year. And the 4 winners were, by name here, Bear Jelly, which is a blood orange / honey, Mandarin Mimosa marmalade, traditional grape jelly, and muscadine grape jelly. So congratulations to the whole R&B1 team. You guys did a great job, and you had so many more submissions. It's really exciting that we're getting recognition on a state level. That brings me to our project spotlight, and I would like to welcome Larry Thompson of the Coppell ISD School Gardens. Larry is the project coordinator out there. Larry, if you're available, would you like to sign in?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
So can you see me? All right, there we go. Okay, how are we doing? Can you see the slide?
Perfect. Looks great.
Fabulous, good, all right. Okay, well, let's see. Let me put this in a different, all right. So I'm going to talk about the Coppell Independent School District garden projects. We are the spotlight for this month. So anyway, school gardens are not new to gardening. They actually established a few gardens over 20 years ago. That's before I came in, definitely. So, but in 2018, the Coppell Independent School District received a grant from Texas Department of Agriculture, the TDA, and that's with a little bit of money that raised a lot of interest in, you know, people wanted to get out into the garden and bring the students and start using it as a kind of as a learning platform. As of this year, there's 16 schools in Coppell that participate. There's 11 elementary schools. There's 3 middle schools. Coppell has a 9th grade campus. There's nothing but freshmen are there, and then there's the Coppell High School. The gardens serve about 10,000 plus or minus students, which is pretty amazing, I think. But yeah, they service over 10,000. Let me make sure I can get this. There we go. All right. So the gardens, what I just pointed out is the garden's primary focus is in the garden is vegetables, pollinators, and composting. Each school, since we really got involved a few years ago, we went into driving a specific template for the new schools that were coming on board. So these typically there's 6 raised beds, and we focus on seasonal transplants and seeds for the gardens. The Coppell Community Garden Greenhouse, Coppell Community Garden has there's 3 community gardens within Coppell. There's also a greenhouse that was donated and provided. So there's so from out of the greenhouse, they work with us and provide us with the transplants that we then take and go into the school gardens. Also, we have because of the TDA grant, we also have an opportunity for purchasing seeds that we put in. So the things like beets and turnips and radishes and carrots, those are that we put those in by seeds, and that money is provided by TDA and other donations. Last year we did over 3,000 pounds of onions, potatoes, kale, Swiss chard, bok choy, lettuce, etc., etc., etc. So we did over 3,000 pounds of materials, so of vegetables, and from that they actually will take the vegetables and take them into the cafeterias and prepare some samples for the kids to go to the cafeterias and get these little samples for free, and then they can sample what they've been doing in the gardens for the kiddos. This month they featured black-eyed peas. So we started black-eyed peas beginning of the summer, and then they grow and mature, and we're able to harvest them in the last couple of weeks. Well, they took the black-eyed peas plus additional peas, of course, that they purchased, but they took the black-eyed peas and put them into the school's cafeteria and let the students go in and sample the black-eyed peas. I personally like black-eyed peas, but a lot of the students really didn't care for them. And this is done through a program called Farm Fresh Friday. So once a month there's a targeted item that they do in the cafeteria. It's called and they use a Farm Fresh Friday. So the cafeteria, her name's Chef Helen. The cafeteria's chef, the district chef. Her and I talk about what we're going to be growing in the gardens, what's available during that time period, and then she will take those items and take them into the cafeterias and create recipes, etc. It's really great, really great system. So the other materials that we don't use, they're provided by Metro Crest. So we work with Beverly. She's one of the directors at the Metro Crest Food Bank and Farmers Branch. So whatever we have overage, which when you're doing potatoes and onions, you can have quite a bit of that stuff. So we donate that to Metro Crest, and they also use the materials for reduced and free lunch programs. What Chef Helen does is she will create a one-page sheet of the recipes. Then she'll provide that one sheet of recipes to the parents, and with the material, with the vegetables that we're giving them, and they take them home and they prepare them and etc. And we've done that for the last 3 years. I'm going to say at least the last 2 years, and that's a really good program, especially during COVID. It's been very resourceful and useful for them. All right. So what the teachers, what do they do in the garden? Well, the students and the teachers, they learn what to plant, how to plant it, whether it's carrot seeds or a transplant, and then also they learn how to try to maintain the garden. The students also utilize the garden for documenting what they've learned. They write little poems they'll take a little books or little journals and go into the garden. They'll write poems, and they just do all kinds of things. This is put on Twitter. I've got some pictures of some Twitter postings, and I'll share with you here in a moment. But the teacher will post this information on Twitter so that they not only other schools within the district, but outside the district, they will that they follow. They will see what they're doing in the gardens and then kind of how they're utilizing it. They also use the gardens for teak. Everybody probably knows what a teak is. I had to learn about that through Dorothy Thompson when her and I first came together. But they use their math and science skills along with other things that they're trying to accomplish in teak in the classroom. So let me do this again. There we go. All right. So this is the last slide I've got before I go into some pictures, and I always have to give everybody a thank you. The Coppell Independent School District Gardens would not be successful without the hard work and dedication of others. The community garden volunteer into the gardens. We have the greenhouse, which provides the transplants. Those volunteers that provide the transplants are extremely helpful with our success. We have local vendors. We got student organizations, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, the schools, garden clubs that are involved, the teachers, the parents, master gardeners, and just so many others that help support the garden to keep it running, keep them running, and to make them available for the kiddos. It just takes a lot of volunteers. and it takes a lot of money to keep these school gardens going. It really does. All right, well, here's the first one. This is Lakeside Elementary, and Lakeside Elementary, this is just a set of 6 that they do. This is a tweet recently from the teacher that we get to work with. You'll see in the far right-hand side, if you can see it, those are the sweet potatoes that we've been growing all summer long. We just recently, yesterday, harvested the sweet potatoes from the bed. There was 3 classes of 5th graders that came out and actually cleared the bed and dug the sweet potatoes out. And I don't know what the total amount of sweet potatoes that they got, but it was a pretty good haul. And of course, the teachers and the kiddos just had a great time. Here's another one that was tweeted out. This the young man in that blue shirt on the left-hand side. That's Kim Lester. Kim Lester's the master gardener from Dallas County, and he came in to help us get these beds ready to plant and to put some soil amendments and stuff in it. So I just wanted to show that too. Again, this is from the teachers. So what they'll do is they'll collect this information, take the pictures, and then they'll post it on Twitter, and so everybody can see what we're doing. Here's an example of the Farm Fresh Friday. This is from last Friday where they did this. These are black-eyed peas. So these are actually black-eyed peas that they harvested in the garden at the Canyon Ranch Elementary School. And again, it was kind of a mixed bag of who enjoyed the black-eyed peas and who didn't. But if you don't give them an opportunity to sample it, they'll never know what a black-eyed pea is. So I don't think that school liked them very well. Okay, this is Cottonwood Creek. This is really neat too. The kiddos came out and they're starting to do some fall transplanting. This is just one of the pictures that the teachers took of kiddos with their hands in the garden, and then this young person is actually looking at a wasp nest that was hanging off the water spigot in the garden. So they took that thing off, and then they got to take it in and look underneath the microscope. And I thought that was really cute. This is the middle school east. So we have elementary, middle school, 9th grade, and we also have the high school that's involved. The Boy Scouts built 2 additional raised beds in their garden. There were 6, and now there's 8. So and 2 of the beds are dedicated to nothing but pollinators, and the students actually are designing and picking what they want to put in the gardens of pollinators, and there's several slides of this on how they did that. But so that's the students being involved along with the teachers, and they've got quite the list of flowers and seeds that they'd like to have to put in their bed for pollinators. So I thought this was really good. It's good involvement for sure. And then the last slide, this is Coppell High School. And this is we just built these beds. There's 8 beds. They're 4x8s, 4 feet wide by 8 feet long. And these are beds that we just created this summer. There in the picture, there's also Mr. Kim Lester that's in there. He's brought his tools over, and him and I built a bed together while the students watched. And then we just sat back and supervised, and they built the rest of them. And then put them in row. They've got them full of soil. They've got a bunch of transplants in them currently, and they're starting to produce some good vegetables, some good plants. So that's Coppell Independent School District garden, and that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Larry. That was very informative, and it's so great to see children out in the garden. That just
absolutely
makes me feel wonderful.
Well, that's what it's all about. If you can plant so to speak, plant the seed in them. You know, when they get to be my age, well, maybe they'll be really involved in it. But I really like the science behind gardening, and the students do too. They have equipment that we didn't have back in the day. You know, they got microscopes and all kinds of stuff that they can use to do analysis on the soil analysis and look underneath the microscopes. Even you saw that little bitty fella. He's got the microscope. He's looking at the wasp, and to me that's just fantastic. It tickles me to death. But anyway, so that's good.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very informative presentation. Well, this brings us to the end here. Our next Dallas County Master Gardener meeting will be a live Zoom. And Jessica's got the slide up there. It will be October 28th. It is going to be our annual business meeting where we will elect 2 board of directors. And our speaker will be Judy Schmidt, Office of the Environmental Quality and Sustainability, City of Dallas. And her topic will be Urban Forest Master Plan that was newly updated as of 2021, May. Judy had a conflict today, and so did Jeff Rosca. So that's the reason they did not speak today. So we'll put them on the agenda for next month. So thank you very much. Joellen, are there any questions?
Let me check here to make sure. We've got a lot of praise for Tony, and a lot of praise for the amount of student involvement at Capel, Larry. It's good stuff going out there. But that's all the comments I got.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you so much for attending. And we will get the recording of this posted in a timely fashion. So look for it coming soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abby.
You bet.